Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode. Today, I'm going to warn you in advance, it's going to be a little bit longer than usual. So instead of Matt's Minutes, we're going to be calling it Matt's Moments. At least for today, and then starting next week, it'll be going back to Matt's Minutes. Now, the reason for this is because I have some exciting news. Today, we are doing a collaboration with my editor's channel, The Preston Perspective. And we're going to be talking about, do you need superpowers in order to be a superhero? This will be really interesting because we actually disagree on this. So, without further ado, please give a warm Matt's Minutes welcome to my great friend and editor, Preston Reedy.
I'm really excited about this question. So, in my mind, I would say yes. Superman has superpowers, so he's a superhero. Batman does not have superpowers. He has cool gadgets and tools, and he's brilliant, and he's a master in hand-to-hand, but he is a vigilante, or he is a hero, and he does good things, but he's not super, right? So that's how I would classify. Or sometimes you might not have powers, but you have something that gives you the ability to be super, right? So like Green Lantern, Hal Jordan himself doesn't have superpowers, but his ring grants him superpowers. Translator for all species, protection, and then all the constructs. So I would classify Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, as a superhero. Thanos, I would not classify as he's more of a villain, right? But he has his power once he has the stones and the gauntlet, not necessarily by himself.
Bring up some good points there, my friend, but I have some points of my own here. So, I looked up the most reliable source ever, Wikipedia, and on there it said that people that had abilities that were greater than the average human could be classified as superheroes. So, take, for example, Tony Stark or Batman, who both use their technology to give them abilities greater than that of the average person. Therefore, I would classify them as superheroes. Not to mention, they both have hands down beaten superpowered individuals. Batman does it on a regular night in Gotham. And not to mention, my boy Nightwing here has beaten the Flash in a race out of a maze. That's pretty incredible. So that is one point I like to bring up into why superheroes can just be average people without powers, so long as they have the abilities that make them better than the average person, as Batman, Nightwing, and Tony Stark totally do. Also, you mentioned that Green Lantern has an equipment that gives him superpowers. To which my argument for that is, how is that different from an Iron Man suit? Like the Hulkbuster. Or Batman's armor that let him kind of go toe-to-toe with Darkseid. Or Nightwing. Just a question. But I think if Green Lantern and Booster Gold, like those kinds of characters, have the ability to have an equipment and be considered superheroes, then by that logic also, Batman, Iron Man, and Nightwing also can be superheroes by using equipment. But again, this is just my point of view, so taking it back to you.
Okay, man. Well, you are brilliant, and you are giving me a run for my money. The Nightwing versus Wally West thing is pretty cool, but it makes sense because he was trained by Batman, and Batman is awesome. And in my opinion, Batman, because you brought Batman up, he hasn't really overpowered people like supervillains and stuff per se. He has outsmarted them and outwitted them, you know? So I'm still leaning towards yes. Yes, you need superpowers to be a superhero. I mean, I don't know how much I can compete with Wikipedia, but since you did some research and looked online, I thought it would only be fair if I did it myself. And did you know that there are already forums and things on the internet where people are discussing this and they're going back and forth and back and forth? I found one website called Quora.com, and I want to share something that writer Cody Richardson said. And I have my handy dandy laptop right here because I want to make sure that I get this quote correct. It says, Batman is probably one of the best martial artists / ninjas, tacticians to ever exist. Totally agree. But he's only a hero, not a super hero. Other examples are Phil Coulson and Nick Fury. All great fighters, tacticians that make them a hero, but none of them have superpowers. Right? They're not gamma radiation, bit by a spider, special alien DNA. Characters as Superman, Thor, Wonder Woman, Manhunter, Hulk, all have superpowers making them superheroes. Unlike Batman and Iron Man, who utilizes their knowledge and their wealth to make a fancy suit and an arsenal of weapons and tools. Now, I personally think that this response is pretty well stated, and I might add, while Batman possesses no superpowers, his dedication and skill set makes him one of the most formidable heroes in DC Universe, both feared and respected by heroes and villains alike. I am not discounting the Cape Crusader. Like he's on this t-shirt. You could, okay, well, maybe you can't see him, but he's on this t-shirt. On this t-shirt is GL, Flash, Batman, and Superman. Okay, I'm not discounting Batman at all. Okay, now, another thing, because you are, I love you, Matt. You are awesome, and you are really making me think about this, and, you know, but I'm standing my ground. I am standing my ground. Okay, so I took a little bit more notes. Now, you compared the armor of like the Hulkbuster to the Green Lantern ring of power. The Green Lantern ring is so much more and can do so much more than just some armor. It allows, GL to fly straight from Earth to multiple planets, right? He doesn't have to use a spaceship and then a suit of armor to fly to a planet, or, because it's not as impressive to fly from a spaceship to a planet or a planet to a spaceship as it is to go straight from the Earth plus the gravity in the atmosphere to another planet. GL can do that. All right. Not to mention the translating. I've already talked about that. All right. For a time, though, Hal was possessed by Parallax and became one of the most powerful beings in the universe. Plus, Hal Jordan's willpower, we have seen become super handy and overpower and outwill so many people. In addition to the ring, he was able to manipulate reality and space-time, as well as grant himself limitless superhuman strength, incredibly knocking out Superman in one blow. Yeah! Okay. In addition to the Green Lantern ring, Hal has also wielded the White Ring, and at one time he used a prototype gauntlet which possessed the power of 12 rings. Okay. So I would pick the power ring over a suit of armor any day. All right. And my last thought is, you brought up Booster Gold. Booster Gold is awesome. I love Booster Gold. I love his story. I love his character development. I love that he comes back in time to become a hero, and then he learns what it really means to be a hero and learns humility. But he is right there with Green Arrow, Batman, Iron Man. He is not a superhero. He is able to produce force fields and have blasters and do these things because of the future tech that he brought back with him. He is still just utilizing gadgets that he has, and gadgets that are still not as powerful as a power ring of Green Lantern.
Whew! Man, you're good. You are very good, Preston. And I love you for that. You are so good. Oh my gosh, dude. That's gonna be hard to respond to. Not gonna lie, you brought up a lot of really good points that I honestly had to like sit down and think about. Okay, how do I think about these things? How do I respond to this? Like, man, good job. Kudos to you. But I still have a response. So, without further ado, let's get going. So, first off, I'm going to counteract some of the things that you said, and then I'm going to go on to some new points. So, first off, you mentioned that Hal Jordan getting parallax was a thing that happened at one point, and you're totally right. It was totally cool when that happened. But if we're going to go down that route, Batman also had the Mobius chair and was the god of knowledge. In addition, Batman has also wielded a Green Lantern power ring. It was an alternate universe, mind you, but it did happen. So, also something to consider. In addition, what happens to Hal Jordan if that happens? If his ring gets taken off? He doesn't have any powers. The power ring is an equipment. Similar to a Batarang is an equipment. The Hulkbuster suit is an equipment. All of these things are equipments. Because Hal Jordan can have as much willpower as he likes, but having enough willpower doesn't really do much if you don't have the power ring to use. Now, I'm not discounting Hal Jordan at all. Quite the contrary, Hal is amazing. Like, this dude is one amazing hero. So don't think I'm discounting Hal Jordan at all. Quite the contrary. Hal is incredible. I'm just saying most of his feats, if not all of them, he could not have done without a power ring. Without a power ring, you put him against Batman, and that's going to be a very one-sided fight. In addition to that, last point, there is an arc. Actually, you know what? I'll get to that here in a second. So I'm going to start off with a quote of my own. I had to look up who that writer was that you were talking about, just because I'm not that familiar with comic book artists. But I found a quote that from somebody that you and the audience might recognize. Tell me, have you ever heard of the name Stan Lee? Yeah, I thought so. So in a book called What is a Superhero, Stan Lee made a quote, and I'm going to read this word for word, just, make sure I'm right. If the good guy is doing something that a normal human being couldn't do, couldn't accomplish, then I assume he becomes a superhero. Now, he does talk about this in forms of like police officers and firefighters are not superheroes. They are heroes, and I strongly believe that. They are heroes, and they will always be heroes. But compare that to Batman, or Nightwing, or Booster Gold, who can do things by themselves that normal people can't do. Going back to the example I was about to reference earlier, when Batman's son was taken by Darkseid, Darkseid, the big bad, kind of god, demigod, I don't know what he is exactly in DC, Batman went to Apocalypse using a suit of armor that he made and drained him of basically his life and was killing him. But Batman took on an army of people from Apocalypse, and he even went toe-to-toe with Calabec and won, who has given Superman problems. Yes, Superman. That's a pretty big deal. And he tricked Darkseid to basically use his Omega Beam so Batman could use the crystal in his hand and use it to power his suit and hit Darkseid with a big enough blast to knock him down, which is exactly what Batman had planned from the beginning. So, we have a man that's incredibly smart, incredibly resourceful, and using his technology took down Darkseid. Give or take, Darkseid stood back up, but at the very least, that suit and Batman tricked Darkseid and took down Calabec. So, I would say that is something that no ordinary human could do. No, they couldn't make the technology, have the ability to make that good of a battle plan, or execute it that flawlessly. Therefore, Batman is a superhero. Nightwing, also, who has taken on extremely powerful opponents, or like I mentioned earlier, with beating the Flash in a maze, no normal human could do that. So I would classify Nightwing as a superhero. But again, this is just my argument, so what do you have to say?
All right, I had to kind of change it up a little bit. I kind of went for a walk and kind of tried to think about some things, and I even took some notes. So you might see me look down at my laptop for this response, Matt. But whoa, dude, your thoughts so precise, so well done. All your Batman points are super valid, and like the God of Knowledge thing was so cool. Batman is an incredible character. There is no denying that whatsoever, especially in the world of vigilantes. And honestly, at sometimes it seems like he's a little OP compared to other vigilantes and heroes. I still say you can't compare a power ring to a batarang, but you are correct that in all the willpower in the world doesn't really do a lot if you can't have a way to harness it. But take away Tony's armor, Iron Man armor, and he's really no different than Hal. Stan Lee is an incredible man. He is brilliant, talented, has done so much for superheroes in the comic book world and science fiction world. And I totally hear him and get where he's coming. And I'm going to talk a little bit about his quote in just a second. But here's my question. So are we now at the point where we have like two working definitions? Are you super because you go above and beyond? Or are you the average human? Or are you super because you have superhuman abilities? And if it's beyond average, what is the line for that? Because a star athlete can do way more than my personal average. So would that make them super compared to me? Does that make sense? Okay, I think we kind of got off the topic. We've talked a lot in the last 15 minutes, and we've kind of done this, and we've given our points. But the overall question is, do you need superpowers to be a superhero? And I still say yes. You need heat vision, X-ray, super strength, super speed, invisibility, alien DNA, gamma radiation. You need something like this. Not just a billionaire with fancy stuff. The Stan Lee quote that you quoted, he says that a normal human couldn't do or accomplish. And then you said at the end that no one else, compared to Batman, is that smart or resourceful. But they could be. You could take a billionaire in today's society, in today's world, with all of his resources, train him in martial arts, give him a bunch of college knowledge, PhDs, or detective training, whatever, and they could be that resourceful. They could do what Batman does. So, but we're trying to compare a person of fiction, the Bat, to maybe non-fiction people. Like, are we trying to talk about people in our world or just in the comic book world? Because then that's any resourceful billionaire. Oliver Queen does it with all of his arrows. He's just like Batman, but his arrows don't allow him to do the impossible. A power ring does. And I know what you're gonna argue again for Batman and Batman doing the impossible, and that's why I said Batman is kind of OP when you compare him to other vigilantes like Tony Stark or Oliver Queen. So, his fancy gadgets aside, or the armor tank, or the armor with tank missiles, doesn't make you super. And I heard you on all of the dark side stuff. I really did, and I love that storyline in comics and the parts in animated films when Batman is just going toe and toe. But when you talked about the Omega beams, that was another part where Batman just outsmarted Darkseid, not overpowered dark side. Batman is constantly outsmarting and outwitting people, and that is how he is winning. So I guess my last question is really to this, okay? So are we trying to prove each other wrong and get each other to switch, or are we eventually just going to have to agree to disagree?
Fine, take your little walk. That's fine. Whatever. I don't need a walk. What are you telling me? I need to get out more? I need to get out of the house? Come on, man. That's just rude. Nonsense. That's what you're speaking right now is nonsense. Okay, sorry. Had to get that out of my system. Anyway, yes, I do think that we could probably bring this a little bit more to a close. So I'll end with this. Yes, I do tend to bring up Batman quite a bit, but there are other heroes such as Iron Man and Nightwing. Take any of the Robins, even Red Hood, Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow. There's a bunch of people, even Booster Gold, like we mentioned earlier. I still consider them to be superheroes, despite the fact that they may not have any superpowers. And I think that comes down to our definition of what superpowers actually means. So, for example, you take super to be superpowers, meaning, do superheroes need to have superpowers? Well, if you think super means superpowers, then yes, 100%. And I can totally see where you're coming from with that. For me, super does not equal superpowers. When I say, do you need superpowers to be a superhero? What I'm talking about is, do you need to be able to do great things that are well beyond normal human expectations? So, like, take me, for example. I could never beat the Flash in a race out of a maze. That's just not something I'm physically capable of doing. But my boy here, oh yeah, he can do it. I bet you he could do it more than once, honestly. So I think that's where our definitions kind of differ. And one thing I think we should also consider is that the definition of superpowers and superhero is mostly related to DC and Marvel. So for example, take one of my favorite animes, My Hero Academia. I just rewatched basically the entire series, and not once did I hear them say superhero or superpowers. Interestingly enough. And the whole show, 80% of the population has superpowers. At least what we would define as superpowers. In the show, they're called quirks. So 80% of the population has these quirks. However, they're called heroes. Even the strongest one, All Might, is the number one hero. Number two hero is Endeavor. And so on and so forth. They're not called superheroes. They're called heroes. And their powers are just that. They're called powers, not superpowers. They're called powers. Mostly they're called quirks, but on the rare chance they slip up, they are called powers. So, interesting perspective is perhaps we're only talking about powers and superpowers in terms of DC and Marvel, but that's a whole nother discussion for another day. So, I think I'm okay with saying we're not going to change each other's minds on this. But that's okay. It's okay to have our own perspective on things. You have yours, I have mine. I'm not trying to change yours. You're not trying to change mine. We're just having a friendly discussion with an audience also listening in. So, yeah, man, I think this was great, and I had a ton of fun.
Very well said, my friend. And you're not wrong. I'm not trying to change you. You're not trying to change me. We're still friends. We still love each other. We get along, and it's okay that we can have conversation and come to two different conclusions, and we can differ. You know, that's the good thing about having a strong friendship is we don't always have to agree on everything. Viewers and subscribers and people watching for the first time or the second time, thank you for sticking with it this long. We know that this is a longer Matt Minute, a longer Press and Perspective, but we really appreciate your time. We appreciate you sticking with it for this long. Awesome job. And we also appreciate your thoughts and your opinions. So now you've heard from Matt, and now you've heard from me. All right, and now it's your turn to talk to us. It's your turn to let us know what you think. So drop in the comments your thoughts. Drop in your comments. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Matt? Do you have your own philosophy, your own idea? Philosophy, I said that weird. All right, let us know. What do you think? Do you need superpowers to be a superhero? Cannot wait to see your thoughts. Thanks for watching. You guys are awesome. Have a great week.